And with that introduction by Ross from Friends, it's been a little while since we were here.
Happy 2025.
Happy 2025.
Cannot believe it's 2025.
Exactly. We took a couple weeks off for the holidays, and it just got really crowded. I'm sure your schedules got crowded. So we hope you enjoyed your holidays. I'm sure that hopefully you had a good time with your family.
We hope.
And we did something fun, but we're going to talk about that later and stuff. So as we come back for another year, this is our third year of doing the Parent Pivot podcast. So
we've done 2 full years.
We've done 2. Yes, that's why this would be our third year.
I know. We're starting our third year. I don't want anyone to think we've been doing it for 3 years.
Yes, we haven't completed 3 years. We've completed 2. Woohoo! 2 candles on our podcast birthday cake. Anyway, we're getting more and more excited about different content. We're excited about a lot of things that we're going to do this year on the podcast. We have a couple of wonderful interviews planned. They'll be coming up in the schedule. And we're also going to Birmingham, Alabama, February 20, 21, 22.
Yes.
For the Grandparenting Summit. So if you're a grandparent and if you're close to Birmingham, would like to do that, we will put the link in the show notes like we've been doing. But we're doing a breakout session. Tell them about the breakout session.
I don't know if I can say it right, but
I don't remember the title, but
it's crud, and I don't have my phone on me. Anyway, it's basically people who are in the sandwich generation who are dealing with adult children and also aging parents
and whatever that looks like.
And all of that.
So we're excited about doing that. We have 2 breakout sessions we're doing. Plus they're going to film us on one. So when we get that link to that workshop, and even if you can't go where you miss it, because they're doing a lot of online. You don't have to go to Birmingham to be a part of it. You can watch it online. They have a list of churches that are doing this online or different places. So we invite you to be a part of that. But when we get that recorded time of our session, we can put that in our show notes as well.
Yeah, definitely.
In case that's anything. So, so I was thinking today as we start off 2025, usually, I just had another birthday. I turned 63. Woo! Woo-hoo. And,
I'm 21.
She still acts 21. But usually the first of the year, everybody wants to make New Year's resolutions or goals or things like that. And here's what happens. I've stopped doing that a while ago because I set myself up for failure because I'm thinking I need to lose 30 pounds. I need to walk, a mile a day or 2, whatever it is. I put these lofty goals up there. And then after a few days or a week, then I go, can't do that. And then I feel failure. And I'm like going, why do we even bother to try? So we're not gonna talk resolutions or goals here today. But what I thought we could do is we have a list of 14 topics. She needs her glasses. I don't. And she says she's younger than me.
All people of all ages wear glasses.
I know. I wear them too. Anyway, we have a list of 14 things we want to talk about today on the podcast that we're just going to invite you to think of one. That book, the what's it called? Atomic Habits mm-hmm. is really in that same thinking. If you make one small change mm-hmm. in your life, just one, it changes the trajectory of where you're headed and where you're going. So as we give you this list of 14, and we'll talk about each one of them kind of briefly, we're just going to invite you to pick one. Pick one that says, hey, in 2025, I want to work on this one a little bit better. I just want to move the needle. I want to move the needle a little bit and improve in this area. And go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but also just keep in mind this list is not exhaustive. You may come up with your own.
Right.
And we would love it if you'd share it with us.
Yes.
And we can, on the next podcast or something, say, hey, we have these people write us and bring up other ideas. So anyway.
And we'd love for you to check in on us. Like tell us how it's been so far. And then I don't know, as you begin to work on one of these and add it to your atomic habits of learning, let us know how things are going. How are things changing? We look at this as a ministry. We don't make a dime, a penny, a nickel, nothing off of this. We're paying for staff, which is our daughter, to take care of all of our social media. And we're paying for a bunch of other things. So this is all out of our own pocket for ministry. And we love doing it. So we'd love to hear from you. We just consider this a mutual relationship. And so please, email us at parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com.
We're all in it together.
All right. Here's the first of 14. Ready?
Ready. Go.
Validate.
Okay.
What does that look like? How can we improve on our validating?
For any of you who have listened to podcasts for a while, you know I bring up this word validate all the time. Validation can change any relationship at any stage, and it can be completely life-changing. So, for example, let me try to think of one with your adult children.
Right.
So let's say I want to validate my adult child in maybe I need to have a hard conversation with them. Okay. Maybe I want to say even something that has hurt me, or there's a conversation like that needs to happen, any kind of conversation. But I might start that conversation with validating who they are, what they may be thinking, how their perception is. So I might say, "Hey, Joey, I need to talk to you, and please know that I understand that you may not understand this. I you may not agree with me, and that's all fine. But I want to share something because I want our relationship to grow. And I feel like if I keep it in, maybe it would not be good for us."
Sure.
So, do you see how I'm saying what needs to be said in a very soft, gentle way, but I'm also validating him in just like, I get that you may not understand this.
Right. And here's some helpful ways. If you're sitting there going, gosh, I still struggle with that, or I still don't know how to do it. So I'm still a newbie at this. Julia has it in her core of who she is. Excuse me. So I'm still learning to, but if I'm listening, if I want to put myself in their perspective, I don't have to admit that what they're seeing and how they're conversing with me back, I agree with. What I want to say is, wow, I can only imagine what that feels like.
Right. Or I understand
I get that. I mean, sometimes it's just a short sentence. I get that. I can't imagine what you're going through. Man, that's hard. Wow. Sometimes I'll say my respect for you has gone up because I don't know if I could face that. Those are all validating statements.
Yeah.
So I'm putting myself there going, I don't know if I could face that. That's, that's where you can bring in some encouragement. And again, you're not, especially if it's about you. If it's about their job or something else, it's like, yeah, you don't even go there like, oh, I've been there before. Let me tell you my story. Do not do that. That's the wrong time to do that. What you just want to do is validate saying, yeah, that's tough. I know what that feels like. And let them ask you, really?
You don't even need to say, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Because then anytime you start saying it becomes about you.
Yeah, that's true.
So you want it to be, if you're having a conversation, you're validating them, their feelings, how they perceive things, all of those things. And that must be really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to move on to number 2 because we do have a 14 going on here. Number 2, own your mistakes. I
think you should say that one.
So for me, as the parent who took longer to get it right, I had a lot more owning to do than my wonderful therapist wife did. And what we mean by that is even as you look at something, like they may be sharing something. And again, we're talking about if something's going on in a relationship, it's their perspective. So I remember the conversations I've had with all 4 kids. I can't think of specific things, but it would be like, yeah, you know what? I could have done a better job. Have a heart of humility. Mm-hmm. Have a willingness to look and saying, I see how I contributed to that, and just own it. Because you're going to go a long way, because they know we're not perfect, nor do we want to be perfect. But it's got to start with humility. Yeah, I made a mistake. I probably shouldn't have said that. I exploded, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened, and apologize.
Yeah, I want to reiterate probably a story that we told before. Years ago, when our son first got married at the church we were at, we started a young marrieds class. And there was one night where we had all these kids over.
Yeah, they're
kids or married kids.
Mostly in their mid-20s.
Yeah. And asked them, how many of you had parents that apologized? And only 2 people raised their hand, and one of them was our son. So out of this group of probably 20 people sitting there, there were only 2 that said their parents had ever apologized. And that blew my mind.
Right. And don't sit there and look and think that I'm some kind of hero here because I'm the one that made all the mistakes. But the nudge and the elbow came from Dr. Julia over here.
Yeah, there was a lot of.
You need to go in there and apologize to them right now. Okay. Daddy's sorry. Daddy's sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, Daddy, I love you. Daddy's sorry. I actually write a book. I'm going to write a book called Daddy's Sorry. All right, number 3.
That'd be a good book.
Number 3, lower expectations.
Yeah, so one of the things that gets us in the most trouble in any relationship are expectations. And you may even think, oh, my expectations aren't that high. And that may be true, actually. They may not be that high, but there's still expectations. And whenever there are expectations, our expectations are going to be let down because people can't meet them, especially if they don't even know they're there. So think of how many expectations we put on people every day. We go to the grocery store and we expect that the line will move and that the cashier isn't chatting for 20 minutes with
someone's
one of
blocking
them.
the aisle and
Or,
paying attention
you
to
know
their
what?
phone and not even knowing you're right there. It's all about consideration. And,
Right.
even as we respond in a conversation, something that is common sense to you and I, and we do all the time, maybe your adult child isn't even thinking about that. It's
Right.
not even part of their thinking. And so it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, even that can become an expectation. I would expect that in this instance, you would do this. Why? Because you grew up in our home and we did it all the time. Even those expectations can come back to bite you.
And so here's a good example of validation in this type of situation. So I realize I have expectations and I'm having a conversation with my adult child. And I say, I realize these are my expectations. And again, this is owning it and lowering expectations.
Right.
All 3 of these all at once.
Yeah, more communication.
I realize these are my expectations and I want to apologize and own that. So that's validation,
right.
In that your adult child is probably seeing that this is your high expectation or whatever.
Right.
And say, I want to, own that. I want to change that about me. Maybe you even ask the question of your adult child, could you tell me other areas where you think I have high expectations that I'm unaware of?
And be ready to listen without responding.
Yes, listening.
Speaking of which, number 4.
They all go together.
Number 4 is listen. Sometimes I feel like I listen, but I'm only hearing, because hearing comes in as I am using my ears and somebody's talking to me, but I'm already thinking my response and what I want to say next because they're wrong. I need to give them information to fill in. I'm not listening, I'm hearing.
Right.
And so when I do that, I don't become a safe person to want to talk to anymore. So if you want to improve your relationship over being right with your adult children, listen. What do you have to add to listening?
I'm going to go back to the validation piece of when you listen, you can actually, I don't know that it's validation, but you're repeating, you're showing that you are listening. Like, the trite kind of thing of what I'm hearing you say is blah, 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 blah. I'm kind of repeating that.
I always make the over analogy that you drive through the McDonald's drive-through and you pull up to the speaker. It says, I'll have a large Coke, a Big Mac, and a French fry. Here's validating. So what I hear you saying is you want a large Coke, a Big Mac, and a French fry. Now I feel heard, like, wow, you actually were listening.
Right.
So you are feeding back some of that without having an opinion attached to it.
Right.
And you could be sitting there going, my gosh, they've grown up in my house for however many years. Why is it they don't see this? We learn from experience. Yeah. And we have to learn from our own experiences before we really learn. So let your adult children.
And you never stop.
Let your adult children fail and learn from experience. And then bite your tongue so you don't have to say, I told you so. And just listen. I mean, the title of Jim Burns' book that we launched this podcast off of was Keep Your Mouth Shut and the Welcome Mat Out. So which is number 5, keep your mouth shut. It goes with listening. What do we have to add to that?
I think that's self-explanatory. Keep your opinions to yourself unless asked.
Right.
And I just keep it at that. We don't need to say too much about that.
No, because number 6 is wait to be asked for your opinion. See how these all roll into each other.
They all go together.
But here's the thing: you might be good at keeping your mouth shut, but you're offering your opinion. So as we're trying to present these 14 things, pick one and work on it. Saying, you know what, I'm gonna stop trying to fix things. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. I'm not gonna offer an opinion. I'm gonna wait for them to ask me, and maybe that's the one. So these 3, 4, 5, and 6: listen, keep your mouth shut, and wait to be asked for your opinion. Kind of all go together.
Yeah,
because they usually kind of roll together. And so kind of look at how your relationship is and going, which one of those do I work on, or any of the 14?
Yeah. And number 6, wait to be asked. As we've stated many times before, remember, your children grew up with you. They know how you think about things. They know what your opinions probably are. And you can always ask permission.
Right.
You can always say, hey, can I speak into that? Or I have a thought about that. Would this be a good time to have that conversation?
Yeah.
But you're asking permission, and you're giving them permission to say no, not right now,
and
Mom or Dad.
And if you do get a yes on that, go, I really see how, you're starting off with validation. Start off with, I really see how this is, you're validating the difficulty of whatever they're in. Here's, whatever your opinion is. So couch it in love, and then come back to the fact that, hey, you've got the ability to do this. Thank you for inviting me in. I would put a thank you at the end.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me in to even share that, because that's a real blessing to me.
Yeah.
So your kids are going to go, whoa, what happened to Mom and Dad?
Mom and Dad.
They're becoming partners.
Yeah.
They're not parents anymore. They've made the pivot.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 7. We have down, create a friend or support group. What's the reasoning behind that?
So it's basically why we started this podcast in many ways.
We're a support group.
We're your support group on many levels. It's, you're not in this alone.
Yep.
And maybe you have several friends that might benefit from reading a Jim Burns book, or
just talking about it.
Or Jill Savage book.
Right.
All of those about empty nesting. So maybe you have a group. I know at our home church in California that we were at forever, they recently did a class on Jim Burns' book, where people our age were all gathering and having that discussion, because they're all in the same stage.
Right. What it does for you is it gives you a going, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. Some people you're going to find are going, whoa, they've got a whole lot worse than we do. Yeah. But you're there to support and encourage each other. And we all need community. So when you're walking through this is why we have grief classes and divorce recovery classes, whatever. Because you're going through the same season together, and you need to know, I'm not alone. I've got other people who are doing this. In fact, one of the guests that we're going to have on here as soon as we do her interview is a woman who wrote a book. I forgot the name of it, but I read it on my Christmas vacation. Her name is Jill Tillman, and she has what she calls her wine friends that she sits down. And she's getting her thoughts out so that she doesn't vomit on her kids. She can vomit on her friends.
Right.
So then when she goes talk to her kids, she's in a better place to be that partner than to be the parent. So you get other people that can affirm you, going, yep, I got the same thing going on. So
and it's not meant to be a bashing session.
No.
It's meant to be
commiserating.
And asking for help. What do you guys think would be the best thing? And talking it through and helping each other through this.
Yeah.
Again, nobody prepares you for this stage of life. There is no prep.
They don't prepare you to be a parent. You get the baby and you leave from the hospital. It's like, well, now what do I do?
Exactly. But there aren't that many resources for people in this stage either. So,
and I also want to say to you men out there, if you're looking for that, mostly it seems like those groups tend to be more like mom support groups, or maybe you've got some,
and that's unfortunate,
fellowship class at church. That's unfortunate, but man, we kind of need this too. And sometimes, for men, we like to sit out on the back deck and smoke a cigar and drink some bourbon. And I don't mean to offend anybody. I'm not a big cigar smoker or bourbon drinker, but I will partake if that helps get discussion going, because we can kind of relax and things and be ourselves and be vulnerable and honest about that. So if you need some help with that, let me know, and we'll see what we can do on community.
Good idea.
All right. That was number 7. Number 8, we're about halfway there. Start a new hobby. And so you want me to start with that? So, well, basically it's like, hey, we've been parents so long. Now we're empty nesters. If you're finding you now have more time and resources available, and you're looking at your mate going, you look very familiar. You might want to do stuff together. Maybe like we went and bought kayaks as we became new empty nesters. And when the weather is right during the summer, we go put our kayak in Lake Lanier. So we've done that. What else have we done?
Traveling.
Yeah. So it's basically now I've got this extra time and or resources. It's like I need to fill my day or whatever. And I think maybe we're mostly talking to maybe moms who don't have a full-time job. I don't know, but
Yeah, but I think
I'm not
that
trying. I
there
don't want
also
to try to pigeonhole people.
there are also a lot of men out there without hobbies. I mean, if you think about when we had kids, you start umpiring, and you did a lot of umpiring, and that was kind of your thing that you did on the side. Well, then your kids grow, and that's gone.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that we do with our kids that are kind of hobby related that suddenly then they're gone, and we need to find new things. So it's not just a woman thing.
I do know an empty nester who goes and plays golf with his adult sons.
Oh, pickleball.
Pickleball.
There's a good one.
That is the fastest growing sport. Check out pickleball. That's kind of fun. But anyway,
Pickleball's
the idea is fill your day or time if you find yourself with more time and need. And it's moving from that identity of like my child needed me and now they don't.
Yeah.
There's less needing going on. So start a hobby. Number 9, take your adult child to lunch or golf or whatever. And I would say don't just use it as it could be just a fun time if you're going shopping, or men if you're going to a sporting event, but look at it as a point where it's like I want to ask some open-ended questions. I really want to get
I want to get to know my child.
I want to get to know my adult child. Hey, so tell me about tell me about the job. What and use open-ended questions. No, in other words, a question that doesn't have a yes or no response to it. Do you like your job? Yes. No, that's not what we want.
No, you can say, tell me about your job.
Yeah, and even as they give an answer, it's like, well, what are some other things? I mean, do some open-ended questions and use that as a time to really kind of get to know them, because what you're showing is, I'm investing in you. I want to come alongside you and understand your heart more and be more of an encouragement to you.
Well, and I think as parents, we don't realize how many things our kids don't tell us.
Right.
And so we think we know our child,
Right.
which we do.
Right.
We know their general disposition and things like that. But as they grow, they shift and change. And once they're 18 and they're out a little more independent,
Right.
I think there are things that we definitely miss, that we think that they're still the same, and we have failed to get to know them as an adult. So asking them questions of truly like you're just getting to know them for the first time.
Well, and one thing that just came to mind as I heard you say that is, here could become a surprise if you didn't engage in some type of that on a regular basis. All of a sudden one day they go, hey, we're moving to Idaho. Oh, okay. How did that come up? Oh, we got this job offer and my wife always wanted to do this and this happened and and now it feels like this big surprise. And now as I would imagine, there might be some hurt on this side, like how come we were in the dark and we didn't know? Mm-hmm. Well, part of it might be, hey, my atomic habit this year for 2025 is I want to, and again, it's not about being nosy. It's not about, you got to tell me everything, but you're showing some intentionality that you want to invest in your relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to put fear in you, like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen this year, right, and things like that. But that's just one example that came to my mind.
Yeah, I think that's
number 10, affirm their character.
Can't do enough of that. And that would be a good lunch thing too, of just, it's a chance to tell your adult child how awesome they are, what you see in them, the characteristics, the qualities, all of those things.
You're hitting the mic.
Oh, sorry. And I got to talk with my hands. And all of those things, just continue to build them up. You're never too old to hear it.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking of, we have a nephew and niece who just had a preemie baby.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the whole family's come around them. We're loving them. And I want to point out how strong they are and where their faith is at. And I want to lead with, wow, this is amazing, because they're going to soak that in and going, wow, my family really loves me, especially in difficult situations, whether it's job related, baby related, pregnancy related. It's like, find those opportunities.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Always letting them know that they have what it takes.
Yes.
That they have the ability and the capability. You want them to not need you. And I think sometimes we forget that. And we have a tendency sometimes to keep people down in our lives because we want to be needed.
Right.
So just reminding them that they have what it takes. They're an adult. They know how to do this, even though they think they don't. And blah,
And
blah,
I think
blah.
even with that, as I'm thinking about how I've affirmed my kids, I can learn from them as a partner. They are another adult. The only difference is they have my DNA. I can learn from a 30-year-old. I can learn from a 40-year-old. I can learn from a 25-year-old because maturity levels. So I've seen some young kids. I'm going, oh my gosh, I wish I was that wise and as you are, and I'm 63 and things like that. So when you can learn something from them and then tell them and affirm them for how wise they are and how strong their faith is or whatnot, my goodness, you have just served up a huge thing of esteem.
Were you thinking you've
Huge.
given them some water?
Yes, that's what I was trying to go to.
You're filling them.
There we go. All right.
Filling their cup.
All right. We have 4 more left. We're going to take a little bit of turn now and take our focus away from the adult kids to each other.
Yeah.
So number 11 is attend a weekend to remember. So we have mentioned this before in previous podcasts, but a lot of times people think, or couples think, oh my gosh, I don't need to go to a marriage conference. Marriage conferences are for people who aren't getting along. They're on the verge of divorce, whatever. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Do not believe it. These are fun, romantic weekends. We've gone to 2 or 3 of them when we were young and had kids. Now, I happen to work in Christian radio, working on the Family Life Today broadcast. So I was constantly in that know, and we were able to go to a couple. In fact, we came up with our daughter's name at a Family Life Marriage Conference.
Yeah.
And stuff. So they're just great to get away. They're different. Like if you lived in, let's say you live in California, guess what? They have them in Florida. They have them in Texas. They have them in different, you can use it as a destination to go, let's get away. Let's go do this. And they start off the weekend by laughing together and whatever. But there's some good tools to, it's like I make the same thing with a car. We drive our cars, we don't change the oil, we don't change the tires, and yet they have to go in and get serviced.
Yeah.
So if we ignore the simple things that keep that car running well, the same thing with the marriage. Maybe we've been so busy with so many things. It's like, hey, we need to kind of reconnect here and take our marriage. We're going to now be empty nesters, and I'm spending the rest of my life being a partner, not a parent, and now I've got this other time. So we're basically saying, hey, invest in your partner, invest in your marriage, and check out a weekend to remember.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that there's anything wrong with your marriage.
No.
It can just be a fun getaway, and it's a chance to have conversations
Yes.
that you're just slowing down and having conversations that maybe you wouldn't have if you were home or something like that. If you are in a situation that is a little more serious and maybe you do want some true help, I would recommend Hope Restored through Focus on the Family, and they have different locations all over the country as well. It's a more intensive, and you can go for a few days. You can be in a group.
Right.
You can be one-on-one. There are different ways to do it at different costs. So I might recommend that if you're feeling like, you know what, I really want something more intensive for us.
Right. And we'll put everything we're mentioning on this podcast, we're going to put links to them in our show notes. So don't feel like you have to write these things down. But if you Googled Weekend to Remember, it'll come up with that. If you Googled
Hope Restored,
to come with that. But we'll put the links in our show notes. I do want to say this disclaimer to you men. Not normally what I hear is usually the man's kind of like, oh my gosh, I got being dragged to this. I mean,
and it's going to be about feelings.
It's going to be about feelings, whatever. I promise you that this is going to be an experience for you that if you give it a yes and pay the amount and go, you will come away blessed. You're going to probably write me and thank us. Kind of get rid of the pride and going, hey, I want to be a better husband to my wife. Mm-hmm. And if you're feeling against doing stuff like that, I mean, those men who are going, yeah, no problem, let's go. But I'm like going, for those guys who are thinking, hey, I don't know about this. You know what? Send me an email. Let's talk. I'll give you my phone number. Let's talk about this. But don't be anti-marriage conference and say my wife is dragging me. In fact, I think that's one of the first things they make fun of. How many of you got dragged here? And stuff like that. You get to laugh at yourself in that first session. But I promise you that God's going to do something that you didn't expect to do. And you're going to head back home going, that was fun. Steve and Julia, they were onto something.
And I think humility goes a long way.
Yes.
So if there is something between you and your wife, you might find that something goes away when you decide to be humble.
And talk about it. And the many
Yeah.
things that you haven't talked about in years, and this gives you a chance to
Yeah.
talk about it, get it out in the open, and solidify a deeper marriage relationship. And if you feel like you have a mediocre marriage or it's not going anywhere, this can be the catalyst that shifts that. This would be the atomic habit that could change your trajectory. Guess what it's going to do? Not just for the two of you. It's going to change your legacy and your partnering to your adult kids.
Absolutely.
Because they may hit a moment and you're going to go, hey, we went to this. We would love to pay for you guys to go do the same thing. So think of it in terms of a wider scale of how you will leave a greater legacy for your grandkids and your kids for generations to come. Okay, that's enough about that one. Number 12 is what we actually did a few weeks ago. A destination holiday together. You want to talk about how that came about?
Yeah, I think we did talk about it probably a month or so ago. And I've been, this is the first podcast I've done in a long time.
Right, you were sick, and Jamie Lynn and I co-hosted the last one.
I was sick and I was traveling.
Right.
So,
but you weren't sick of traveling.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I might have been a little sick of traveling. Anyway, all that to say, I think though we did mention that we were going to do this. So we were in a situation this year where all of our children who are married were going to their in-law families. And normally we would probably still travel to one of the kids' homes and spend what we could with them, whether it was that day or Christmas Eve or whatever, we would do that. But this year we decided, let's do something for ourselves.
Yep.
And I love the beach. You love the beach. We love the beach a lot.
Did we say that enough?
And so we went to
Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. Never been there. We had a little bit of rain, but we still had sun, and it was a different kind of Christmas.
Definitely different.
We actually experienced it from the Dominican side of things. We did not realize going down there that they celebrate more on Christmas Eve than Christmas Day. So we woke up Christmas Day with our Santa hats, ready to take pictures. Everything was gone. And I'm like, okay, what just happened? But the point of it was we didn't get down on ourselves. We didn't miss the kids because we could just look at the ocean and grab our pina colada and keep sipping it. And we just relaxed it. It was more of a time for us to just lay in the sun and just slow down and relax. We had like 7 days there.
Yeah.
And
it was a little different because it is a resort and there's a lot of partying going on, and we are not partiers.
No.
So, Christmas Eve, I was really missing church. And Christmas morning, I got up and I was walking somewhere and I saw this family sitting in a circle. And
that was awesome.
They were reading the Christmas story together, and I started I'm going to cry now.
Which was kind of cool. God reminded us of that. It was really good to see. I mean, there was a legacy being built right there that morning and stuff. So it got us out of our norm. But what I'm saying is, again, this is part of the empty nest part of the list where it's like, hey, look at yourselves and going, you know what? We could have sat home in Georgia and felt sorry for ourselves and cried the blues, seen the gray sky, no leaves in the trees, and been miserable for 7 days. But we went, the heck with that. We're going to go have fun.
Yeah, so that worked out for us this year, and we ended up having the money to do it this year. So that ended up.
Okay, we got 2 left. Number 13, self-care. And the question is, what do you need? And a couple of things can come out of self-care.
Yes, because it's what does self-care look like for you?
Yes, what does it look like for you?
It will look different for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big bath taker, so that's a big self-care thing for me.
Right.
You walk a lot.
I do a lot of walking.
That's self-care for you.
I have, what else am I doing? Get this.
You're going and stretching.
I'm stretching. I'm stretching my body. I'm taking better care of my body that I didn't normally do. So self-care for me is I'm going to the stretch zone. Get some stretch zones out there. That's great. But also, my wonderful bride, I wouldn't say nags, but she nags about what I'm supposed to eat. So I can't have any more Reese's or any more Reese's peanut butter ice cream because that's one of my favorites. But here's what happened. While we were on Christmas and we're at this resort, I'm like going, I don't want to eat a lot for lunch because I want to go have this like steak at dinner time. Mm-hmm. So I went in for lunchtime. You guys get this. I put cucumbers on my plate, tomatoes on my plate, some cheese, a couple pieces of California sushi, California roll sushi, and some fruit. Oh, some pineapple. And so I started getting in that mode, starting to eat healthier. And I've come home, and that's been my atomic habit that I've like going, hey, I can keep doing this. So I go get a cucumber at the store and some tomatoes and so anyway, I'm taking care of me and working on my diet, making sure I'm walking, fun things. So any of that stuff. And also too, I go once a month to see a therapist. I want to make sure that he knows me really, really well. I've seen him for 4 years. And I just want to talk through things about life and what's going on, either in my marriage relationship or my job or the ministry that we're doing, the podcast, whatever, and just, have that kind of connection. So that's taking care of me. Mm-hmm. That's what I do.
Yeah.
You have anything that you want to add to that?
Well, that kind of takes us into the last one.
Yeah, the last one that we're going to do, number 14, is we're going to mention all this in one big thing and kind of break it down to two. There's hey, you may need self-care because things are a little bit deeper down beneath the surface that things are going on that you don't know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And you might need to engage a therapist or a counselor. And what does that look like?
Or a life coach.
Or a life coach. And that doesn't need to be for forever. I mean, it kind of depends on what's going on. And taking care of yourself first. We do want to have this disclaimer about self-care counseling and marriage counseling. You want to explain the difference?
Oh, okay. I'm like, where are you going with that?
Yeah, just the difference between the two.
Well, marriage counseling is for the marriage.
But right, I understand that. But what's in the marriage counseling, as a therapist who's done marriage counseling, what is it that you don't want to have sitting in front of you?
I don't know where you're going with
Two
this.
people pointing at each other.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what are you getting at? We didn't discuss this ahead of time. Can you tell? Yeah. I mean, one of the first things that I always ask a couple when they come in is, I want to know if somebody was being dragged there, or one of you being dragged to be here, right, that doesn't really want to be here at all. And then the second thing is that I ask people is, are you willing to look at yourself and change yourself? Because honestly, it is not worth it to even engage in it if you're not willing to look at yourself. A lot of people come and get counseling in hopes that I will choose a side and tell somebody that they're wrong.
It's like you have the referee shirt on, the whistle. It's like throw a flag, and it's like you're right, whatever. That's
and chances are I'm going to think you're both wrong and that you're both right. But what I more often than not will recommend, if there is a true issue in a marriage, oftentimes it's just learning to communicate better.
Right.
And that's not a true, really big issue. It is learning skills of communicating and listening and stuff. Right. That's totally doable. But when somebody's got deeper issues and they're here to point their finger and they've had it and whatever, oftentimes I am recommending that they get individual counseling first, because it's really hard to bring two people to a table who are broken and try to create something that's not broken.
Right.
It's really hard to do that. So in the self-care realm, I would completely recommend that if there are deeper issues with you as an individual, then get the individual counseling.
Get individual counseling first. And the marriage counseling is where both people are willing to say, you know what, I recognize that I'm bringing some of this stuff in, and we need a third party to be able to hear the issues. Mm-hmm. And I need to be able to look at myself. You're going into marriage counseling to look at yourself. What can I change? And if both people are doing that, you're going to be successful in marriage counseling. And you're probably not going to be in it for very long. You may only need, 4 to 8 visits or something. It depends on what the issue is. But if you're both going in with your hearts going, what can I learn from this? And taking the homework and working on it, because you've had couples like that. Yeah. You've had couples that took the homework seriously. Mm-hmm. They worked on it. They came back. You're not seeing them anymore.
No. Yeah.
That'd be ideal. So but here's what we want to end with. We are going to make some changes. In fact, Julia has really thought about this a lot. She is very much, I'm going to do all the talking here and stuff, because she doesn't like to talk about herself. But one area that we have found that could be very helpful to y'all out there as parents pivoting to partners. In fact, you've actually talked to some of our listeners in a relationship coaching session. because therapy can be quite expensive. I mean, the going rate right now is $150 on up.
I would say more like 175 on
175, but when you start talking about a weekly thing, you could be spending $800 a month and going, why am I doing this? And that's usually the first thing that you're going to cut out of your budget if you can't afford it. And yet it's probably the one thing that's needed the most because those issues aren't going away. I can't process them. I may be drinking wine more or liquor more or
shopping
more or working more or whatever. That's
looking at porn more.
Right. We're doing those things to medicate and nothing's changing. So the relationship continues to struggle or flounder. So what we want to do is be a resource to y'all. Because again, like we said, we're doing this because we're not looking to make a buck off it. However, with our one-on-one time, what we want to do is offer to you all, both of us, and more maybe Julia than me, but I'm also available to husbands. And sometimes you think we would talk to couples?
I'd rather just keep it separate initially.
Okay, let's start with wives talking to Julia, husbands talking to me. But we want to bring down that cost to make it more affordable to you in a shorter time span. You may have one situation going on that's been bugging you with an adult child or with elderly parents or whatever. It's like, you know what, I don't really need 6 to 8 sessions. We're thinking that it'd be more like 3 sessions because in that first session, you're trying to get to know each other and connect, right?
Right. And so when I'm talking about 3 sessions, though, I'm thinking more along the lines of if you had to have a difficult conversation with someone.
Right.
If it's deep, you're going to need longer.
Right. So we'll talk about that, but that first session is going to kind of lay out that. But what we want to do is just make this and offer this to you all out there as something that's a little more affordable. So we're going to knock off 33.33% of that going lowest rate that's out there and only charge $100 and stuff. So if you want Julia for an hour session for $100 or me for an hour session, we are both board certified pastoral counselors here in Georgia, and we are allowed legally to reach out via virtual to any state in the country to provide that kind of help. So think about that. If that's something you want, you can get in touch with Julia 2 ways. One is go to her website, and we'll put it in the show notes, meadowbrookcounselingga.com, meadowbrookcounselingga.com. Again, we'll put the link in the show notes, and that's one way. Or you can email either one of us at parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. So we're here. We want to provide help. This is where our heart's at. Julia, I would not be the husband, the minister, the father, the beloved son I am without this woman by my side. In a couple more months, we're going to be at anniversary number 37. And she's so empathetic and understanding. She may cry with you to experience your depth of hurt and pain. And it's just amazing. She's able to come to a balance between what we call Western psychology will tell you to do all this stuff. And we're based on God's word. We're a pair of believing sons and daughters of the Most High King, and come to the middle point saying, hey, where's the balance between these things that we know psychologically? Where's the clinical part meet the spiritual part? She's excellent at doing that. And I just continue to learn from her. So anyway, anything you want to add?
So I want to go back to the 3 sessions and why why we're saying 3 sessions. So if, let's say you had a difficult conversation that you wanted to have with an adult child or a parent or your spouse, whatever, we would spend the first session, kind of getting to know each other and finding out what that issue was. Second session would be actually dealing with the issue more in very specific. This isn't a complete, how do you feel about that type of thing? It would be very focused and organized type of, okay, let's work on this and let's do this. And this is the homework that you have and get that done. And then the third session would most likely be like following up, like, how did that go?
Right.
How did this work for you?
Right.
And
did it improve? Did it not improve? Did it stay the same? Because you're working with dynamics here. We're working with specific situations. You're working with your own personality. Are you an introvert, extrovert? What do you? We have to kind of get a good knowing who you are, and then the other stuff. So there's no magic pill that you swallow and everything makes it all better.
Right. And if you think of it as very short-term intentional therapy, that's more what it is.
Yes.
And the reason, so we are board certified in as pastoral counselors in Georgia, but I also over here I have my master's
Yes,
in marriage
yes,
and family therapy.
yes,
So I have that clinical piece.
yes. I do not have the clinical piece.
I'm not licensed in
Nope.
Georgia, and then we've got that spiritual side over
Right.
here.
I've got
that
my
we want
Master of
that
Divinity,
balance.
and I've got a ministry toward men called Bringing Kingdom, things like that. So we just got 30, 35 years of just experience of just walking with people
Yeah.
in their journeys and kind of, saying this is what we've learned and we're sharing it with you. So
Yeah.
anyway, if that would be helpful, again, you get a hold of us either at middlebrookcounselingga.com for Julia, or just email us at parentpivotpodcast@gmail.com. So,
Yes.
hey, I hope you look at this list of 14 things. I don't want to run through all of them.
One.
Choose just one.
Don't overwhelm yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we'll come back. We'll do a check-in like, hey, how are you doing on those 14 things for 2025? Did you pick one? And let us know. Send us an email. We're constantly, or we're also on Instagram and Facebook. So if you're on Instagram and Facebook and you're sending, stuff to your kids or seeing pictures of your grandkids or whatever, shoot us a direct message on Instagram or Facebook. At Parent Pivot Podcast. We'd love to connect with you there.
I think we're on TikTok too now. Are we?
Yeah, but I think they're going to get rid of TikTok in the United States. That's kind of hanging in the balance.
We'll see what happens with that. But
the only
I think
TikTok
Jamie Lynn put us
is
on
right
TikTok.
there. It's right behind me. That clock. That's all I know about TikTok.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. We love hearing from you, and help us spread the word in 2025. We're going to be at this grandparenting conference. We're going to be doing a workshop. All these things we're just throwing out there. We just have a desire to help other parents pivot from being a parent to a partner and things.
Like us, share us,
rate us,
ask questions to us.
Yeah.
Yes, all of those things.
We love it.
Please.
And then we'll see you again next week on the Parent Pivot Podcast.
Bye.